Hi, I'm Allison. I've been doing assemblage art for about 15 years. I really hope to make a contribution to a wider maker community. I think we have a lot to share with each other that is often overlooked. Today I am talking about adhesives, and there is one glue among all these that you can eat, but we will get to that later after a bunch of other fun stuff. I'd really like to thank the 6 people who have subscribed and the 3 people who liked the last video. It sounds small, but it means a lot to me. First, I want to direct you to some of the resources in the summary. There is a list of vocabulary if you want to review something, and a link to a place with great definitions, and another to a place that will really help tell what material will glue to what other material with what supplies. I love that place. First, well, I have quite a few notes here, so this could actually take a while, but I'm going to start with different important qualities of different adhesives. I'm going to talk a little bit about UV resistance. Everything ages, but there is some degree of control that you can have over that. In fine arts, there is usually a distinction between professional grade and student grade materials, and mostly here I have professional grade. Golden is really good for that. I can do that because I work very small, but otherwise they are more expensive than student grade. Other adhesives and putties that are also UV resistant include Nano 470, but that's for only glass to glass and glass to metal joints. It has more limitations than that. It's toxic. It needs special equipment. E6800 is one that I like. It is UV resistant. It says on the tube there, and you'll notice that E6000, which more people have heard of, which is also an industrial strength adhesive, does not say UV resistant because it isn't UV resistant. So if you want something, anything that you'd use E6000 for, but you want to be exposed to sunlight, go for E6800. I also want to talk a little bit about Milliput. This is the superfine white Milliput, so it does have titanium dioxide in it, which is not necessarily great to put next to resin directly, but it is easier to manipulate when it comes to filing and sanding and drilling and carving and stuff like that. You can kind of smooth it like a clay when it's still curing. There's also GS Hypo cement here, which is not as UV resistant as these other things, but it is used for jewelry. Generally, it was originally meant to be used for GS watch crystals, from what I understand. So in a pinch, depending on the project, you can go with that as well. So now I'm going to talk about a flexible versus a brittle join. Join meaning just anything that you glue together, the point where it's adhering to the other thing is the join. Flexible and brittle, it sounds like brittle is bad, but it isn't necessarily. When I say brittle, it's kind of like wire will bend, soft wire, armature wire will bend, but if I took this clamp and was eventually able to break it, it would just shatter. So that's brittle metal, and wire is flexible metal, and they just have different jobs. Things that are flexible here include the E6800, GS Hypo cement, probably this gold leaf adhesive and sealant here, and some of the gels, the matte mediums. But some of the brittle things, which are quite strong but will still once you're able to get them to break, they'll shatter, and if they're subject to repeated motions, even small motions over a long period of time, they'll eventually have problems. Now I really like the Ace quick setting epoxy resin in here, but it's just eventually, if you use it for something that gets a lot of stress on it, it will shatter. In the same way, Milliput's awesome, Steel Stick is great, but eventually they would break, whereas E6000 and the GS Hypo Cement will be much better at being flexible over time, and if something is subject to repeated stress, it will hold up better if you use a flexible adhesive. Another important thing to think about is the lifespan, not just of the adhesive, but of the join that you're making. This can be very dependent on your environment and the materials that you're joining and the adhesive that you're using, temperature, UV resistance. This is Cocoina. It is better for collage and papers. It has natural ingredients, and that also makes a difference, especially when it comes to pH. If something is too acidic or too basic, it will age in a different way. Milliput is also very situationally useful when you're making something that's supposed to be more ceramic looking. It's great if you're gonna need to manipulate something, sand or drill or whatever. It's good, and it is much more archival, although again it has that titanium dioxide in it. There are other Milliputs that don't, like the black Milliput. Terracotta Milliput is really just the super fine white that has that problem. And the Steel Stick is very much metal to metal stuff. It's meant for joining metals very strongly, although the strongest JB Weld product that you'll find for that is a paste, and it's just the original JB Weld, which takes a very long time to cure. If you're working with light objects, Steel Stick or you know, the JB Quick Weld over here will be great. But for a lifespan of an adhesive, you also have to take into account, for instance, did you have it shipped in weather that was too cold? If you had this in the dead of winter, you know, traveling to your door, it's not necessarily going to have the same kind of shelf life that it would have initially. It also is relevant what kind of environment you're keeping it in your house. Is it in a hot environment? Is it in a humid environment? Is it very dry where you are? It all makes a difference, although sometimes the difference is slight, as to how strong a joint is and how long it will last and how good it will look. Another problem that has to do with lifespan is just the quality of the packaging, because a lot of metal tubes will just split, and E6800 is one of those. So is the JB, you know, any JB weld in a tube could have problems. The GS Hypo Cement has a different problem, though. As you can see, it has this needle applicator, which is quite delicate. I'm going to have to take a minute to close this up. So when you're handling a metal tube, you want to be careful first about how you're turning the cap, because if you do that too hard, or the nozzle gets too gummed up and you're trying to wrench it around, the cap itself will just break. It's just plastic. As for the tube, metal tubes have to be handled a little more carefully than plastic ones too. When you squeeze them to get any adhesive out, it keeps that shape. So it's like you're still squeezing it kind of whenever you let go. And you can tell that that's happening if you take a cap off and adhesive just blobs out. So what you have to do is kind of keep it in a cylindrical shape if you can. Don't roll this, just flatten it. Try and, go from the farthest end inwards, but it's a little chancy to just roll it. Nope, I didn't forget, and it was not just clickbait. There is a glue that you can eat, and I have talked about it already. It's either cocoina or cochina, but I haven't been able to find a video where it's pronounced out loud, unfortunately. It is made mainly from potato starch, well, entirely from potato starch and almond extract. It's kind of a glue stick looking paste. It comes with a little brush. It's meant for kind of more age resistant collage work, and you just kind of spread it on. There are other forms like liquid in a little tube, and I don't know, it smells like marzipan. I'm not going to eat it, but I encourage you to, and then come back and tell us how it went. Thanks, bye.